welcome to the Sunday afternoon Dhamma talk. It's 4 o'clock here in Thailand, and it's probably mid-morning or later in Europe. And so the Sunday afternoon calls are most specifically for people in Europe, as opposed to the Saturday morning calls, which would be Friday evening in the States. So today, let's talk about karma. Most specifically, a kind of interesting take on the word karma. Now, the word karma actually itself just means action. That's all it means. However, there's a lot of connotations that we can look at. Now, the idea of talking about karma comes from an article Bhikkhu Buddhadasa wrote. Actually, it was just an excerpt from one of the larger works. And the title of it was, comma, the choice is yours. Now, we're going to put that into the framework of paticca samuppada, or dependent origination, because there is no place in classical dependent origination where the word action actually occurs. However, there is a specific place for it. And so we'll talk about that. Now, the way to get started on this is to talk about paticca samuppada, is basically in two different parts. And the two parts would be the beginning, which happens all in the mind, uh, especially in the sense of when we have sense contact with something, then we tell a story about it, and the making up of the story, and then the story itself is what impacts us, not actually the sensory input. Now, that impact is where we're going to start today, because the impact or the touching of us, when something happens and we're touched by it, that touching then will set a frame or a reference point, or let us say a direction. Now, the word that I'm using for direction here in the Pali is actually the word Vedana, and that Vedana has been classically translated into the word feeling, but there's some problems with it because the English word feeling has a wide variety of meanings. Almost always we think of feeling as emotion, and this is not emotion. This Vedana is more of a direction, in the sense of, in fact, in the sutras, it talks about it as liking or not liking, or both or neither liking and not liking. Okay, so sukha asukha Vedana would be either that we like it, it's a mixed bag. We either like it or we don't like it, both together. And another way of talking about it is that it's kind of a confused feeling. We don't really know whether we like it or not. Now, this actually sets a direction, and that we have to make sure that we're understanding that this place for most people, almost all people, in fact, is an ignorant position, because we don't know it. We miss it. It happens so fast, this directional pause. Now, from the next point of paticca samuppada, it goes from Vedana into tanha. Now, tanha can be translated directly as thirst, hunger. Mostly it refers to as thirst. We normally translate that into English as wanting. I like it, I want it. And then the next step would be the Pali word of upadana. And this is the place where things get really interesting in our discussion today. So we like something, That means that we are in a direction for it. And then tanha is the motivation that sets in motion the emotion. So you can say then that the emotion now is at the state of upadana, and that's translated as craving, but we miss out on a lot of stuff when we think of it as only as craving, because actually this is the point where if craving happens, that means that action is happening, that actually craving is an action, as opposed to merely liking something or wanting it. So imagine that the guy is sitting on a chair and that he sees something, and that he sees it, he looks at it, and he likes it. Never mind what it is. It can be a girl or a car or somebody that he knows or somebody that he doesn't know, whatever. He sees it, and then he wants something. He's still in the chair. But when he starts to crave, that means now he's getting out of the chair and going in that direction. Okay, so this is where we want to make sure that people understand that action actually has that quality of having had the motivation and the direction, and then the action happens. Now, at this point, also, we can say that when the action happens, that's also the creation of the actor. This is where self comes into play. Now, in classical Paticcasamuppada or dependent origination, it has that step after the craving or the upadana. It calls it bhavana. Now, bhava, rather. The bhava actually is, let us say, getting out of the chair. Now, in, let us say, classical tankas from Tibet, this is actually an image of a pregnant woman. And the pregnancy is like the beginning or the development, but it's not the birth yet. And that tanka has, let us say, two different ways of looking at it. One is the ordinary way, which has rebirth and reincarnation and other things like this in it. And then we have it as the noble way of looking at it, in the sense that it's merely the development of the self. And then the word self is actually in the Pali is jati, not rejati. The word jati actually means birth, but it doesn't mean birth the way that we normally use it in English. In fact, we use it even in English. We use different definitions of the word birth. For instance, we have the birth of the blues. Well, we don't have a guy named Blues running around because of the birth of the blues. That means that it was started off or it got kicked off. And this is then where we wind up in dukkha. So going back to that analogy, sitting on the chair, looking, liking, then getting up off of the chair and going into action. So that tanha, that wanting, is the motivation that we have, and almost in all cases, it's ignorant. Now, it's possible that our motivations are wise motivations in the sense of the motivation for gratitude. And I'll express that right now. I'm really glad to see all you guys here. That's my motivation. All right. And that the action is telling you that I'm really glad that you're all here, that this is gratification. So, we can also think of it as generosity. So, the liking of the Dhamma creates then the wanting to tell the Dhamma. And so then the action is the giving of the Dhamma as a gift. So these are these three things of Vedana, Tanha, and Upadana. And that the point that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was making in that work is that we have a choice if there is wisdom at the point of contact. Pasa leads to Vedana. And if we are wise, then when the feelings arise, they can become wise feelings. Now, there's a very interesting story that's been told over the years about Achan Samedo and Achan Cha when they were at a ceremony. And that Achan, by the way, it was a Keten ceremony, and I'll talk about Keten just a little bit, in the sense that it's held right after the rains retreat is over. Historically, the Keten was for all of the lay people to bring their rag clothes to the Wat because in ancient times, during the rainy season, the monsoon, it was so strong that it basically rotted all the clothing, everybody's clothing, the king's clothing, the prince's clothing, the pauper's clothing, all the clothing was rotted away because of the monsoon, because they didn't have polyester in those days. So everybody gets a new wardrobe right after the rains are finished. And so the rags then from the last season would be brought to the monks, and the monks would then put this cloth on a loom, and the loom itself is the keten. So the giving of the cloth was what was happening in the time of the Buddha. Now in modern Thailand, that's evolved. It started with that tradition, but the evolution was that the people started buying store-bought robes and giving to the monks. But more importantly, in Thailand, there was a tradition that every man would become a monk and stay a monk for about 2 years. That way, in that 2 year period, he really got to understand the Dhamma. He really was a really good human being because he was well trained by the senior monks, which meant then that at the end of the Keten ceremony, when he would disrobe, he was prime, high quality, prime marriage material. Why is that? Because he had already been trained that he's not going to go around getting drunk. He's not going around beating his family. He's not going to beat his wife. He's not going to beat his kids. He's upstanding because he's learned to behave himself when he was a new monk. So in Thailand, what happened at that time, or close around that before that, is that the mothers of the daughters and the mothers of the young man who was ordained would kind of find each other. There was a matchmaker system that was going on. And so at the Keten would be the time when the mothers would bring their daughters to the temple in order to meet prospectively meet the prospective new husband. That, by the way, Thailand has had arranged marriages for many, many centuries, and they tend to work out. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, in fact, was in a book that was called Dhammic Socialism. He actually talks about that arranged marriages have a better chance of success than those that are based upon uh, the desires of the young people. That the mother and the fathers will know each other, and that they can figure out what's a good match socially, financially, and other things like that, and kind of make the agreement as to what the dowries are going to be, the exchange. Now, in the really old days, they would have either land that was given by both families or gold that was given by most families in case the father died, his children and wife would be taken care of. Nowadays, it's evolved into motorcycles, televisions, and other things that don't last quite so long. But the ceremony still exists, especially in rural Thailand. So here is Ajahn Chah and his new student Samedo. He wasn't actually an Ajahn yet then, and that all of these pretty girls all dressed up to meet their new husbands. And Ajahn Chah turned to Samedo and says, "What do you think?" And Ajahn Samedo said, "I like it, but I don't want it." Okay, so he was cutting it off wisely right there at the Vedana. He saw it. He knew that they were pretty girls. They intended to be pretty. They worked really hard to get pretty. And so he could appreciate that they were pretty, but that was all there was to it. He could stop it right then and there. That's what we mean by wisdom at the point of the Vedana, so that it doesn't go into the wanting. In other words, he turned in the direction he saw, but it did not give any motivation. Normally, the guy will see the girls, and it will motivate him to stand up and walk over there and introduce himself. Okay, so this is now the process that we go through. And we can see then at that point, when we see something ignorantly, we almost always want it. There is more to it, by the way, than that. When we want it, that means that we've got to have it. We're motivated now to go get it, and that's the action that happens. Now, there's something else that happens about that time, and that is that we have the idea that if I want it, that means I'll be better off if I get it. Which means now, all of a sudden, because I want something, that means I'm not quite as whole as I was before. Now I'm missing something. What am I missing? That's what I want. And so by wanting something, we actually create a deprivation in us. And so in this regard, this ignorant Vedana of liking actually begins to get painful. And we got to go do something about it because we're incomplete now. We don't have what we want. And along with that comes that, oh, if I did get what I want, guess what? I'll be better off. Therefore, this is the big one now, what I want must be good. And we can change that around to where if I am on the other side of it and I see something that I don't like and I want it to go away, and I'll actually do something to push it away, that means ignorantly, I think that it's bad. And so this is where judgments of good and bad come from. They're ignorant. Why? Is because we're not aware of that little feeling that we have of just liking and not liking. And so Vedana is actually quite subtle. Now, you can see, in fact, that as we go through this phase ignorantly, we'll go from I like it to I want it to I've got to have it. And this is where emotions come into play. So Vedana is not actually emotions. And so we have this problem of the word feeling because it's got multiple definitions. And guess what? We change the definition of the word by our internal processes along the way. And so when we then talk about feelings, we're generally referring to emotions. And so when you see somebody, let us say on Discord, talk about bad feelings, they're not actually talking about Vedana, they're talking about bad emotions like anger or frustration, or why did you do that? Or what the hell? And these what the hell or why did you do that is actually because it's a mixed quality. They have that mixed feeling. They don't know whether they like it or not. And so this is where we wind up ignorantly. We actually have an emotion. So that emotion, let us say, if the emotion is anger, then in our language we would say, I'm angry, which means there's the birth of the self. The anger now has an owner, the angry one. Okay? And this is actually a mental process. We actually create the self. Another way of speaking of it is that the clinging is what's happening at that point, and clinging can't exist without a clinger. So notice that my arm here, and I like it, therefore I go to it and I grasp hold of it. That grasping hold to it is the action, and it creates the actor. If we can understand that, then we can begin to practice correctly. So that, and by the way, this is the earliest part of practice. This is the practice for the very beginner, is begin to see our Vedana, begin to see our likings and our not likings and our wantings. Why? Because if we can see them that early, we can turn them to wisdom, and therefore we do not have to go through that hunger and thirst process and that gotta have it process. So if somebody does something on Discord, like calls you a name or merely mentions a name, one thing that I saw is that somebody called their roommate, what was it, a dingbat or a dumbbell or something like that, dimwit. That was it. And so I wrote back, may all dimwits be happy. And this person who had written my roommate's a dimwit, she thought that it was her being called a dimwit, where in fact that wasn't. She was the one who called her roommate a dimwit. So notice that she ignorantly grasped hold of that word and thinking that it was she who was called a dimwit, when in fact it was she who called her roommate a dimwit. This is the ignorance that happens very, very fast. All she saw was the word dimwit, and she owned it. It's me. How dare you call me a dimwit? And nobody called her a dimwit. I, I think that's hilarious. So we see this kind of thing all the time, but it's most beautiful when we can see it right there in front of us in the Discord groups, when we see these people coming in with these various views. Now, I'd like to introduce this topic in a slightly different way, coming from it from the perspective of the Great 40 Sutta, number Majjhima Nikaya, number 117. Now, before this, we've been actually working through, there's many, many different sutras that talk about Paticca Samuppada. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talked about it in his work on Kama, It's Your Choice. But mostly it would be either Dhamma Nikaya number 9 or Majjhima Nikaya number 9 or Majjhima Nikaya number 38 have good descriptions of Paticca Samuppada, or the dependent origination. So we're going to change a little bit now into seeing it from the perspective of the Great 40, which is also the exposition on the Eightfold Noble Path. Now, the Eightfold Noble Path actually the Buddha starts off with it. I'm going to teach you what is right, noble organization of mind, or right, noble unification of mind with its supports and its features. And what are the supports? Well, let's not do that just yet. Let's talk about it in the sense of that right noble view is a support. It's one of the factors that will lead one to right organization of mind. But the Buddha says that right view comes first. Actually, view comes first in all cases. Now, he does talk about wrong view and ordinary right view. And from the perspective of the Discord group, I would give you a new definition. Now, the old definition that I've had for a wrong view was the guy says, I can get away with it. In other words, there's going to be no results of my actions. There is no action and a result of action. There are no gods. There are no parents. There are no society. I can get away with it. Like a drive-by shooter, he thinks he can get away with it. All right. Well, let's change that to a little bit into what you'll see on Discord would be something like, screw you. This is the wrong view. Screw you is the same thing as I can get away with it. Now, ordinary right view is, in the older definition, would be, no, you can't get away with it. You can't get away with it. We've got cops, we've got monitors, we've got a police force. And if none of that works, we've got a priest who's going to send you to hell because you're having wrong view, saying, screw me. I'm going to send you right to hell in my mind. And maybe I'll send you right off of Discord. I'll block you or something like that. Okay, so this is ordinary right view. And so the guy says, I could get away with it. And ordinary right view says, oh, no, you can't get away with it. Now, with this new looking at it, this new definition of screw you, the right ordinary view is going to be something like, oh, please help me. And you'll see this on Discord. These people will go back and forth between the two, the wrong view and the ordinary right view of, I need help, please help me. And then when you give it to them, they say, screw you. They don't want it. Or they'll say, screw you in a different way, something like, oh, I can't do that, or oh, it's too hard, or oh, poor me. And so these are the two ordinary people's way of viewing things. And you can see then that that ordinary view is going to then determine what sort of story that they tell themselves and what sort of Vedana, liking it and not liking it, they're going to come up with. But the Buddha teaches in the Eightfold and Noble Path, the place to start is with right noble viewing, to look, to see. One of that looking and seeing actually fits right in with the wisdom at the point of contact, because we can see what our story is doing to us. And therefore, we have a choice about how we're going to respond, either in liking, not liking it, or somewhere in between. This is now the practice. So when one is practicing alone, we can say, go into seclusion, go all by yourself, and start looking at what's happening in the mind. Start looking at the fact that many of the thoughts you have are unwholesome because you're telling yourself unwholesome stories, and then you either like it or don't like it, which leads then to an internal wanting, grasping, and clinging, and the self. In other words, you can work yourself up to very easily work yourself. You're sitting on the cushion. You're sitting all by yourself, and yet you can work yourself up. You can start thinking about politics and get all hot just all by yourself. But we're talking right now about on Discord, and you see something written there, you tell yourself a story about it, and if that story is an ignorant story, then you're going to respond with, oh, please help me, or screw you. These are the ways that people will respond in ordinary. And it's very hard then to get them to come around to saying, yes, I'm going to try that. Yes, I'm going to start practicing looking at the way I feel. I'm going to start looking at the stories that I tell myself. I'm going to be able to change those unwholesome practices into something more wholesome so that we can become friends.
Dhammarato?
Yes, go right ahead. Go ahead,
One
Amrat.
question. Here we do not have the raise hand button. I don't know if we have. Okay,
Pardon?
so one I think like in a Skype there was a raise hand button, so you can click on it. But I do not see such an option here. But my question is my question is about the if you are sitting in a seclusion and now suppose you are attacked by a hindrance of say sleepiness or a hindrance of aversion or a hindrance of restlessness, is it also related to the story you are telling yourself or
Basically, that's the story you're telling yourself. So the hindrance would be, let us call this the hindrance of doubt. And the hindrance of doubt is this going to come up then with the thoughts of, am I doing it right? Which then leads to the Vedana of confusion. Oh, I don't know if I'm doing it right. Oh, what about this and what about that? And oh, I got to go ask somebody, etc., like that. So they get up off the cushion and they go to Discord, all confused. You see how that goes, all right? So, if in fact, when we're sitting alone and we can see these questions that come to mind and the feeling of doubt that's associated with it, we can say, aha, I see you, Mr. Doubt. I see that stuff. And I can say, never mind. I'm going to throw that doubt right out of my mind and come back to have wholesome thoughts like everything is okay. Wow, I'm glad I caught that one. Or if you're on Discord, you could actually do the same thing. Wow, I got confused for a moment. I'm not sure. Maybe I can just say, not sure, and just express it like that rather than WTF or WTH or whatever expletives that they have when they're doing it ignorantly. So somebody else had a question? Who? I don't see. Mikey, I'm still not familiar with Discord yet.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have a
all
remark.
right, Deidre, go right ahead.
Well, first remark is if you go down to the bottom of the Discord and you look into the emojis, you can find hand. That could make like an agreement that somebody wants to say something. It looks like this. I'll look it up now. And it's like this. Do you see it?
I see that hand going over there, but I don't see the icon on my screen for it. More options?
No, not so far. Well, anyway, it could be yeah, you could also make a noise, like a golf clap.
All right.
But I
Okay,
just did
so
the air horn, and that wasn't.
okay, so you have the floor now, Dietrich. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So, very interesting about what you call Vedana. So, if I understand correctly, there are 4 steps. First is you see something, then you like it, and then there's a moment where you give birth to craving for it. And that's the moment where you actually should try to cry to see. I see you, Mara. I see it happening. So you can stop that process.
Actually, you can do that all along the way. Aha, I see you, Myra. You can see that when we begin to make stuff up. So let's back off. Instead of 4 items, let's start with I see it. And then in order to understand it, I make up a story about it. And that story is based upon my past. Now that the story is made, we then have that story as what contacts us. That in fact, what we see does not contact us, is what we do with it. An example of that would be, may all dimwits be happy, and there's various things that people can do with it. But if somebody says, he called me a dimwit, then that's going to bring up that story of he called me a dimwit. That's what's going to impact the feeling, or the Vedana is then going to be that of aversion. And now the wanting is to get even, and then the action is going to be screw you, or something like that.
Yeah,
So
but
this
I'm
is
still
all right.
very intrigued about like the moment where you like something and then Achampo said no, and I like it but I don't want it. So I think that's very interesting, because you also said if you are wanting something, the moment you crave for something or you want something, then there's something here that's not whole, obviously. Otherwise, you wouldn't want it. So that makes me think, should you renounce all wanting, all craving?
I wouldn't say renounce it. That in fact, the renunciation, the Buddha actually calls renunciation, is something that ordinary people do, like taking a vow, like a vow of silence, or maybe a vow of marriage. It's something that you do, you renounce into the future. A much better way of looking at it is that being on guard for it. Because if we renounce it, then when it does happen, we feel bad because it happened and we renounced it before that. But if
Yeah.
instead we could say, I'm going to be on guard for that because I know it's going to happen. It's part of the habit patterns that I built up over time. So now, instead of renouncing it, I'm going to say I'm going to be on guard for that, so that whenever the word dimwit comes up, it's not me.
Yeah, be aware. That's yeah.
Yes, pay attention, to be aware of these words that come up, rather than owning them and saying, "Oh, he called me a dimwit," or he can say, "Oh, you're the most beautiful world," and we
It's the
say,
same.
"Oh, I like that. I
Yeah,
like that. Oh, poor me. Oh, let me go get some makeup and make it even better." Okay,
it's a
but
different
we
taste
can.
of ice cream, but it's still ice cream. It's this different
Uh-huh.
taste, but it's the same. Yeah, get it.
Mm-hmm. And the difference is whether it is real or whether it's mine. That by owning it, by claiming that it's mine, that means that we're ignorantly at that point of action, that point of clinging. So, on a regular basis, and I'll take an opportunity to do it now, and I'll pick on Ivan again. Ivan, congratulations, you're doing really good Dhamma work on Discord. When you meet these people who are either screw you or, oh, please help me, you give them good Dhamma. Thank you. You're doing a good job. Now, the question everybody's asking, how do you feel? How did you respond to that?
How do you feel?
Yeah, how do you feel when I congratulate you?
Pretty okay.
Pretty okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that pretty okay means that you do have some wisdom. One of the things that we could say about that is you've been there, done that. You've heard me say that before. The
Yes.
first time I said it, you were probably feeling a whole lot more okay than you have now. Right now, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the point that I was wanting to make, and that is number one. The number one issue is be careful of the word feeling, because it's got more than one definition. And calling the Pali word Vedana, calling that feeling, is bound to get us all screwed up, because the normal definition of the word feeling is emotion. movement, acting, which is more like karma itself. All right. So emotion or feelings of emotion is actually an action that we take. The action of anger. And the anger, then, when we're angry, we will then take subsequent action, which makes the self even more strong, more powerful, which leads to more suffering or more dukkha, especially in the sense of people going back, oh, I screwed up. Oh, I apologize. Oh, I got angry in Discord. But if we have the anger, we can see it. There's anger there. Let me keep my fingers away from the keyboard and experience that anger. Breathe it out. I don't have to take any vows or renunciations for anger, but I can see it and see right now how dangerous it is. So this is what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa means by action. The choice is yours. Are you going to act out of ignorance? Are you going to act out of the motivation and the direction from your Vedana? Or that initial feeling, that initial little niggle, that direction that we turn. That's not the action. That happens before the action, and then the motivation comes in, and then the action happens. This is according to the way that the Paticca Samuppada is taught in the sutras. And you have a choice at every step along the way. And the choice is, can you see it or not? You can see, in fact, one of the places, like you're about to type WTF, and you get the WT in, and then you say, wait a minute, I'm not going to put that F on it. I'm going to backspace this. I caught myself. I do not have to send that angry message. So you can catch it at any time. But the best place to catch it is at the point of contact, because at the point of contact, you have choice over how you're going to feel about it. For instance, you can have a good, warm, fuzzy feeling over the word dimwit. Oh, what an interesting word, dimwit. I like it. Maybe I'll use that. Us dimwits, we're going to town today. Instead of not liking it, because not liking it is done ignorantly. Let's have wisdom at the point of contact. Let's have wisdom at the point of the Vedana, of do I like it? Do I not like it? Am I confused? Let's have wisdom. Let's see what's going on at the point of the motivation, the wanting, the tanha, the thirst. Or we can actually go as far as in the process of the action itself, and we can stop the action in process. But once we've made that action, once the send button is hit, that's actually the send button hitting is probably the full-blown self. That's the dukkha. If you can stop yourself before you hit the send button, then you're okay. It's that send button, or better still, once you send it and you see it, you can say, wait a minute, let me delete this. So you have choices all along the way if you have wisdom to see what you're doing. If you have the right noble viewing, can you see what you're doing? Because if you can see what you're doing, you have a choice about your actions. And if you have your choice about actions, you can have wise actions. Okay, that's enough of that. Maybe we can say that this needs to be repeated over and over and over again, because if you're on Discord, there's stuff flying by there's always a brand new now. It's always a time. Let's be wise right now. Let's start looking at what's going on line by line. Every moment is a new now, let's practice anew now over and over and over again. Repeat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. This is the most important quality that we have, that we can't just hear it one time and then, as Dietrich says, oh, well, I renounce anger. That's not going to stop anger. No, what's going to stop it is you see it right while it's being created, or you can see it as the motivation for the anger comes up, or you can see it as the dislike comes. And if you can say, aha, I don't like that, but I'm not going to let it go into wanting to take revenge and create anger. So we can have looking at any point along the way. And for the beginning, the very best place to do that is at contact. As soon as you make up the story, you can evaluate that story as to whether you're going to let that story fly and have feelings about it, or whether you could change the story immediately so that you can feel the way you want to feel. Over and over and over again, we have that choice. So, Ben, do you have anything to say about this?
Thanks for that, Dhammarato. Just that feeling the way that you want to feel is really great.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And by the way, I would like to take an opportunity to congratulate you also for having such wholesome, noble things to say on Discord. Congratulations. I've been watching you. So let's see who. Timo, what do you have to say about today's talk?
It was good for me. It was a good review because, yeah, the repetition is good. More, more understanding through more repetitions. The way I understood it now, because if you don't see it, if you don't cut it off at the point of Vedana, and it has already become a feeling, a self identified with the clinging, then by saying aha, you separate yourself from it. You cut off the self identification and make it, and you can make it a Vedana again by saying, okay, let me just look at the body and view this as a feeling, not without all the story. And then you can have the choice again. Is that a correct way of, or a possible way of phrasing it, of viewing it?
Mm-hmm. Very good. How about you, Anasis? I see you with your cat picture.
Yes. Hello, Dhammarato.
Ah,
Hello,
good to
everybody.
see you.
Good to see you all. Yes. So I've been reading the text that you posted on Discord of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa about dependent origination, and he said that there is two way of seeing it, like the ordinary way and the noble way. And he said that the ordinary way is based on morality, and the noble way is based on karma that leads to the end of karma.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expand on that?
Yes, okay. The way that it's normally practiced is to assume that every new student is an ordinary person, not yet ready for the noble path. That's especially true for children, because children don't have the wisdom or the discernment to see what's happening so quickly. And so, what we teach children first, and this happens, by the way, in every religion, it happens all over the world. In fact, even without a religion, you'll still have laws of the country. Even in a village, you have the things that the children are not supposed to do, and that stays in with them. So from that perspective, you can see that when somebody is new to the Dhamma, the first thing that we want to do is teach them the precepts or the sila. In other words, we're beginning to emphasize to change your wrong view of screw you into the ordinary right view of let's get along, or I need help, or I need to fit in. I'm not going to go harming people intentionally. So this is how not just Buddhism, but this is actually the teaching of Christianity. This is the teaching of Islam. This is why the Christians want to put the 10 Commandments in the schools, is to get the kids to behave themselves, so that we spend all of our time teaching and not so much time disciplining the kids because they don't know how to behave. So this is the beginning teaching. This you could call Buddhism. And that is Buddhism 101 is for ordinary people to begin to clean up their act, which means now, if you think about it, Dietrich, this is wisdom at the point of action, which is pretty late in the game, but that's where we start them, is wisdom at the point of action. And then in the noble teaching, we do it at wisdom at the point of contact. We back it up from the action to the wanting to the feeling or the Vedana, all the way back to the point of contact. And that's what makes the teaching noble, is because you have a choice before you get into your action, to where the ordinary teaching is to teach the children or the adults, in fact. Now, one of the things that's quite interesting here, that I would say is kind of an observation, and that is almost everyone who has called me already has enough sila that they're ready for the Dhamma. They're really ready for the noble, super mundane teaching of the Dhamma. I kind of made the mistake and think that everybody is like that. But now that I've been on Discord and see some of the ordinary stuff that I find there, I'm not sure at all. And in fact, many of the people that you'll find on Discord, they do not want Sila. They do not want the noble path. They want to complain. And if they can't, they're going to come up with yet another screw you. And we've seen quite a lot of screw yous on Discord because they don't want to change. They want to stay stuck. They want to feel bad, almost as if it were a badge of courage. And so I congratulate some of you for actually going in and beginning to change these people's mind around just a bit, so that they can actually see that their behavior actually is painful for them. Their actions are hurtful. They're in pain because of their unwillingness to see, even at that point of action. And so thanks, Anasis, for pointing that out, that's the beginning point. The beginning point is to teach people to have wisdom at the point of action. That's for ordinary people. Pretty late in the game. But for the nobles, we're going to get on top of the game and have wisdom at the point of contact, when things contact us. So, Caleb, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's awesome that we can make a change and not just be a slave pushed around by emotions. I think it's a really awesome thing.
All right. Let's see who else. Oh, Carl. Wow, good to see you, Carl.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you for joining us again. I noticed you moved over from Skype. That's good. So do you have anything to say?
No, nothing particular.
All right. So how about you, Karwan? Do you have anything to say?
Hi, Dhammarato. Dhammarato, to be honest, I'm feeling like a victim right now, and I'm feeling like I'm not really getting it. In one way, I understand what you are saying, and I'm following it. But after 5 minutes after the call, probably I will forget everything and be doing what I have been doing before. I found it, yeah.
All right. Then for you, I would recommend watch what your actions are. Start paying attention to what you're doing so that you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt others. Watch what you're doing. And pretty soon you'll be able to start watching the motivations for what you're doing. Okay, does that help you?
I will. Yep.
All right. Yeah, watch what you're doing. One of the things that, in fact, that I give is I haven't given this out to anyone recently, but I'll give it out now, and that is the chair meditation. Does anybody remember the chair meditation? Mikey does. Yeah, Mikey remembers. Okay. Amrit, do you remember the chair meditation? Okay, so Karwan, listen to this carefully. This will help you to move out of your mindfulness at the point of action into something a little earlier. And that is this. Whenever you're sitting in a chair, when you get up, just like I was talking about earlier in the talk, when you get up, you take a moment to figure out why did you get out of that chair? It was a nice, comfortable chair. There you were, all fat and happy, and everything happened. Something, then you got out of the chair. Why did you get out of the chair? It's because you were motivated to action. So check that out. Why do you get out of the chair? And I would recommend that for anybody. Whenever you get out of a chair, stop for just a second and figure out why you got out of the chair. Many of you, as you get good at that, you'll know before you even get out of the chair why you're getting out of the chair. But you'd be surprised at how many people get up out of a chair and don't have a clue about why they got out of a chair. That's especially true for kids. That's why it's so hard to control them in the classroom. The teacher says, sit down, and up he comes. And he doesn't even know why he got up. So that's the meditation for you, Karwan. Is for you, when you get up out of a chair, you stop long enough to figure out why you got out of the chair. In fact, possibly as many as half the time, you'll sit back down and laugh. Oh, I got out of the chair and I didn't even need to get out of the chair.
Dhammarato, is it like simply like, say, I'm sitting now somewhere, when I stand up, I will say, okay, why do I stand up? I stand up
Yeah.
because maybe I want to get water or something. And then
Yes. Exactly so. To make sure that you know why you wanted to get up. Because that will help you understand your motivation for getting up, for taking the action of getting up out of the chair. You were motivated, and the motivation was thirst. That's the tanha, which meant then that you could chase that back a little bit to where, oh, I felt a dry sensation in the throat. And that dry sensation led me all the way of getting out of the chair before I even recognized that whole sequence of events. So this is how you can do it, okay? You can start with where your children are all taught. That's the Sharia law. They give the Sharia law. Oh, if you keep the Sharia law, you're going to go to hell, you rat. And so the kids start behaving themselves because they're afraid. But we're not teaching it from the motivation of fear. We're taking it from the motivation of let's be free from that fear. And so that's the place to start. If you can't start anyplace else, if you got to start from the very, very, very beginning, then that's the place to start, is to start looking at your behavior so that you can change it. And then pretty soon, by looking closely, you'll begin to see the motivation behind that behavior. And then you'll be able to see the story behind that and the feelings that the story gave you. That's where it becomes noble. Can you do that, Karwan? Can you at least watch your behavior?
Yes, I will.
All right. You were taught that from childhood, so I think that it should be an old habit already for you.
Yep.
All right, let's do another. How about you, Paul? Do you have something to say?
Really great talk. Second Noble Truth is really amazing. And seeing it as a process um, uh, also points to that we are not special in a way, just stopping along the Paticca Samuppada at different points in the moment. Like maybe before action at times at the point of Vedana. But it's a continuous process of breaking the chain of birth within Paticca Samuppada. And
Yes.
yeah. Another
So,
thing I note.
go ahead.
Yes, please go ahead. Okay. Another thing I related to was being on guard, staying on guard. It seems staying on guard is an easier approach instead of going into the unwholesome and then having to take a U-turn back to the wholesome. I found a lot of value on being on guard. Yeah, that's all.
Very good.
Thank you.
I would like to comment on one word you said, and that was feeling special. All right. It's only at the time of action that the creation of the self. And by the way, here's something quite interesting about it is that the self that's created is always special. It's a special self. It's me. And ain't I special? That's why I'm so angry. It's because I'm special. And so that's an interesting point, that there is no specialty when the point of contact is not special. The feeling of liking and not liking and confusion about the liking and not liking, the Vedana, that's not special. Wanting something and not special is only when the action occurs, when the craving starts. That's what makes the special. And so if you have wisdom at the point of contact, there's nothing special about it. Not at all. So, Simon, do you have something to say?
No, I understand. The chair example made it clearer for me. So thank you.
Oh, good. All right. How about you, Michael Swift?
No, I got it. Good to see you and everybody, Dhammarato. Thank you.
Yes. Welcome from Skype. Got a lot of friends here that came from Skype. Good to see you. All right, Mikey, why don't you take this thing home? Wait a minute. I saw some hands
I
floating
have
through
one
the
more
air.
question. I have one
All
more
right.
question.
Go ahead, Anna.
So what about like when you see something and you see that you like it, and then you're like, I would like to have it, but if I don't, it's okay. But
Yeah. Yes. It's okay that I don't have it. I like it. I want it, but I'm okay without it. There's no hole torn in me. There's not
okay,
something missing now. The
okay,
Christians, by the way, have this idea that they've got a hole inside and it's just the shape of God, a God-shaped hole. They don't have a clue about the fact that God is a shift shader. He'll fit into any hole that you've got. But the hole that you created was the hole of being incomplete because you liked something, you wanted it, and now the only way to fill that hole is by going to do some action. And at any
so
place
it's
along the
good
way.
enough. It's if you're like, I would love to have it, but okay, if I don't, it's good
Yeah,
enough.
it's good enough. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm okay without it. Exactly so.
All right. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any things to say before we finish?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amrit.
Yeah, just one thing actually, Dhammarato, I think I learned this from one of your talk. And I think once you mentioned that you want what you already have or what you can easily get, and then you will be happy. So I think
Well,
this.
that's pretty wise, isn't it? To only want the things that are easily and readily available, as opposed to wanting something you can't have, and now you got to go do a. So, if you want a sip of water and the water is right there on the day, you don't even have to get up. You just sip the water. Is anybody else? Was that you, Dietrich?
Yes, it was,
Oh.
but not only me, Ivan as well. Go ahead, Ivan.
Oh no, I'm not sure if Carl Wang was still there. But if Carl Wang, if you're still there, I think like the forgetting is really normal. Something that have helped me is keep rewatching one specific video that resonate with you. Like for me, it was a call I had with Dhammarato back then. It's a lot of the things sounds really simple on surface, but I don't really get it. But because I keep re-listening it, and then eventually something just click. So yeah, I will just kind of offer you that you could watch some video.
Yes. Now that you've said it, that's a good point. If you find a good video by me or anyone else, repeat it. Watch it a second, watch it a third, watch it a fourth time, over and over again. It's good. If you got something good in the beginning from it, you'll get something good in the middle of it. Watch it all the way to the end, over and over again, and pretty soon you've got it.
Thank you, Ivan. Yep.
So, Dietrich, go ahead.
Yeah, in answer to Ivan, I'm really fond of your video guided practice gladdening the mind. So that's also for everybody. It's really short, it's really sweet. You can do it everywhere you want. Just go and sit down and put your headphones in and listen to it. But it's also personal, I guess. What I still wanted to share is that I just realized in this talk that my getting into action is usually because I'm bored. So that's really interesting to look at. So it's bored, there's nothing, is that all there is? And then I get into action to make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you
Instead
for
of
that.
just saying, wow, I am so bored. I love boredom. I've been bored so many times. It's right comfortable. Let me just sit here and be bored happily instead of bored and hating it.
Yeah. Do that. Thank you
Wow.
so much.
No place to go and nothing to do.
Nothing
I
to
can
do.
just sit here and I'm so happy I've got nothing to do.
I'm so happy, I'm so bored.
Uh-huh. That is in fact part of what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was talking about in that article, is that it brings the end of action. The karma that brings the end of karma. So get ready for a whole lot more boredom, because you're really going to enjoy the hell out of it. Because you've got nothing to do and no place to go, and isn't that marvelous? So, Mikey, go right ahead, sir. Take action.
Yes, thank you, friends, for being here today. This is a splendid call. I did want to mention, yeah, we don't quite have the same sort of hand-raising feature as Skype has. It's totally okay to just unmute and speak up if you have something to say. We're all friends here. If you're watching this on YouTube, come on over, join us on Discord. You can find a link to join in the YouTube description. Also, for friends new and old, go ahead and put a day and time down for doing a one-on-one call. doing these sorts of one-on-one calls with each other really helps to build friendship and keep the Sangha going. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we really appreciate people who have been posting there and scheduling calls, and there have been quite a few calls that have been happening lately. So thank you for that.
One more point about those one-on-one calls, and that is that on these calls where I'm here, I'm really selfish. I want to talk, and everybody else is so kind that they let me do it. But on those one-on-one calls, you have a chance also to teach the Dhamma. And you will learn more Dhamma by teaching it than you will by listening to it. So I highly recommend you guys get on calls with one another and teach each other the Dhamma. You get it regurgitated. When you're speaking it, you really think through what you're saying. It really does help. The Buddha actually says that. There's 5 ways of learning something. One is by hearing it. Number 2 is by reciting it or reading it from a book. Another one would be to memorize it so that you could chant it, or a poem or something like that. The 4th one is discussing it with your friends. And the 5th one, the very high quality, is to start teaching the Dhamma. You don't need a certification. You don't need to spend a lot of money. All you need to do is to have the trust that you know what you're talking about, because you've experienced it. You have practiced it. And so now it's okay to say it. So I highly recommend that you call each other. Anything else? Mikey, anything else?
Yeah, that's all. Thank you, friends, for being here today. And take care. Take it easy.
Thank you all for coming. This has been a delightful talk. I've really enjoyed this.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. We'll
Thank
see you.
you. That was
Bye bye.
delightful. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.